Welcome to episode 3 of The Leap Home, Star-Crossed.
In this week's episode, Sam arrives in 1972 and finds himself in the body of a sleazy lecturer who offers improved grades to students who are willing to participate in a little extracurricular activity with him. Matters are complicated further when he spots a face from his own past and determines to fix a regret he's been nursing. But can he heal his own wounds without damaging history? Or is he crossing a line that may cause unintended consequences?
I think the woman was sexually suppressed.
Far out, man. You think she wrote this because she was horny?
Right on.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are we?
I'm not too bad, Gerry. How are you today?
Well, it's either suppressed or horny. Which would you prefer?
I'll take either. It's fine. Let's harness it for the power of good.
Listeners won't be aware, but we've not recorded for a few weeks now. They'll think it's all seamless, it all just flows. But no, we've had a couple of weeks off. I must admit, due to my circumstances.
Yes, but, you know, we shouldn't talk about that too much.
Oh, an injection, some cream,
It's quite personal.
antibiotics.
Amputation.
Amputation. At the snooker. I know our listeners love when I chat
They
about
hate
snooker.
it. Everyone turns off.
Had to go away there for a week and managed to catch a 147 at the Crucible
It wasn't all you
live.
caught at the Crucible, was it?
Listen, that's the other thing. But what's that? For American listeners, what would be watching a 147? What's that equivalent? Would that be like a slam dunk touchdown in the last innings?
No, it's like a 300 game in bowling.
Is it?
I don't know.
Okay. It's rare.
Yeah.
A 300 game is not that rare, is it?
I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah, it's quite easy, that bowling. I've said to you before, I've been bowling about 10... we do it in this country, kids' birthday parties, that's
Yeah.
you know the type of thing that you would do. You go to the 10-pin bowling alley and you wear the communal shoes.
Disgusting.
Now, I've chatted to you about this before. It must be a really easy game. I remember when I was 14,
Yeah.
okay, had probably bleeding my life about 3 times, not a lesson, knew nothing about it, using these balls that are far too heavy for me, just picking
Yeah.
up one that'll do. And I remember getting a turkey one time,
Yeah.
and getting lots of strikes as I didn't know the rules, didn't know what I was doing, I was throwing the balls, had no idea. Now I'm thinking, if at 14, you're getting 3 strikes in a row, with no concept, no training, nothing, using weird smelly shoes, and I'm guessing, like the lanes, if you are a bowler, if you were an American bowler, you would think these lanes are dreadful, they're not looked after, they're not, you know, it's the same equivalent of going and playing pool on a pub table full of fag burns and all sorts of stuff. They're not great. Really easy game. If I dedicated a little bit of time, I'm reckoning to, if I played once a week, I'd probably be in the top, you know, I'd be an international player, I imagine.
Oh, would you? Natural talent.
Well, either that or it's just an easy game, and I think it's quite easy.
Okay, when did you last play?
About 5 years ago.
Okay. Okay, I'm sure there's no pro bowlers listening to
Probably
the
not.
show, so you can say what you want.
Yeah. Before we begin this week's podcast proper, some corrections and admissions.
From you.
Well, when I say correction, I mean I'm correcting you and admitting that I'm right.
That's not really an admission then, is it?
No, it's not.
It's more of an attestation.
Last week, I think I mentioned the fact that 40 years from 1956. Explain, what was I getting at?
You don't even remember?
I can't remember. I've noted here that I was right.
So Al said to Sam at one point last week that the other way of getting back home would be to wait 40 years. And we did the maths, or you did the math and came up and said that's not quite right.
Because it would be 1996, and obviously this was
89 or whatever it was.
However, the episode was set in the near future from 1989, so 1996 would be about right for that.
Yeah, you should have realised that at the time.
Yeah.
You now look like a fool.
An absolute idiot.
Hopefully nobody's binging this and they've just listened to 2 in a row.
The other thing is that maybe reading more into it, but we discussed McCarthyism.
We did,
That we thought that might be what the trials were on the radio.
potentially.
There's a slight connection. They also mentioned Arthur Miller,
They did.
who wrote The Crucible,
Okay.
connecting it back to the snooker.
Uh-huh.
And The Crucible was based, the theme was that of the McCarthy witch trial. It was set back, you know, it was witches back in the day, but it was inspired by the witch hunt of
So you think maybe
McCarthyism.
nods to these,
Maybe, yeah.
rather just a subtle approach rather than hitting it over
It
the
could
head.
just be entirely coincidental, of course.
Who knows?
Anyway,
What did you think of this week's episode? Do you remember? When did you watch it?
about 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it. I thought that, firstly, there are a couple of, one major ethical issue that we will probably have to discuss.
At least one.
Also, it's another episode that stands out in my memory from watching it because of the fantastically gorgeous peak Terry Hatcher.
It's also a better look at the sort of format we can expect from the episodes rather than the ones we've had up until now.
I think so. It's starting to get into its rhythm.
And Sam's a bit more comfortable in adopting the new persona.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get into it, quick social media reminder. You can find us at Leap Home Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. And we're at The Leap Home on Facebook. And our website is theleaphome.com. You can also find us on YouTube, where every episode is available a week ahead of its podcast release. And that ends this informational broadcast.
Well, I mentioned Snapchat.
No, come on.
Okay.
We do actually have a Snapchat. I registered a Snapchat, but I'm not putting any content on it.
Is it pictures that disappears?
Apparently, but I'm not who would I send pictures to.
Why would you want pictures to disappear? There's only one thing that I can think, yeah.
It's used for ordering products.
If anyone wants to send us disappearing pictures.
You can find us on Snapchat, apparently. I don't know how.
Okay.
I don't even know if you can search for people. You probably need to know my phone number.
Would you?
I don't know. I think it certainly is tied to that.
07.
Let's get away from this and see what Sam's up to.
Okay, let's crack on.
They are not fully confident that we know what's going on with the series yet. We get a voiceover explaining the entire concept again at the beginning from Sam.
Yes, where he describes himself as a travelling Lone Ranger with Al as his Tonto.
I'm not sure, chronologically speaking, if this is placed based on his knowledge that we've seen him gather, or if this is a slightly future Sam and they're taking a few liberties. Doesn't really matter, does it?
Not really, no.
It's just giving us a little bit of background information, and then we get the opening credits.
We do. Before we find ourselves in a classroom, I think we discussed this last week. There are swooning girls. I think it's an all-girl college, or certainly an all-girl class.
I think this was the first time we get the look at the sort of blue, glowy leap.
Yeah.
And yes, and we get this voiceover again where he explains he has to figure out who he is, where he is, and why all the young women are staring at him as though he's Tom Cruise.
Yeah. He leaps into the body of an academic who drops his pipe, and did I mention last week, or did we discuss it? It's very much an Indiana Jones feeling to it, vibe.
Well, there's certainly some elements of that, but we've got a question about that will come up later on. He asks where he was, and one of the class reminds him he was explaining Heathcliff's obsession with Catherine in Wuthering Heights.
As we heard in the introductory clip.
A red-headed girl asks if he thinks the obsession comes from Bronte's own yearning for Bromwell, and as you say, we get the clip about her being horny.
He also admits that he's not a fan of headbands, flower power, or English literature.
Oh dear.
That's a problem.
It is.
Considering that's what he's got to teach, and that's what they are wearing.
Yes, and when he's asked for his opinion, he plays for time and is saved by the bell.
He is. I mean, he's saved from a 35-year-old college girl.
Well, this was the norm for... It still is.
Yeah.
For casting decisions.
I was struggling to place this at first. Was it a high school? Was it a college? What's the situation?
I think it's a college, yeah.
College, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it would be even more inappropriate if it was a high school.
Outside, they all leave, and we find out it is in fact a summer school at Lawrence College. And as Sam looks at his identification, he discovers that he is who?
He's Dr. Gerry Bryant. We should say that when the class were leaving, they were all making eyes at him.
Yeah. Which is really weird considering what we see in the mirror.
Yes, that's what I thought. So you can understand, okay, yeah, he's got a way with words and romantic poetry, but
still,
he looks like a homeless gnome.
He does. He does, yeah. So it's 1972, I believe. Is that right? June the 15th.
He bumps into one of his students at this point.
Jamie Lee. I thought that the B plot which actually might become the A plot, but Jamie Lee and her boyfriend, I thought was very fun. I thought she was very good.
Okay.
You didn't like her?
I'm not sure that she is well treated by the story.
No, perhaps not. Perhaps not.
Her agency is kind of co-opted by various other parties.
Oh, it most certainly is. But I still thought the dynamic between her character was...
The performance is good.
It's energetic.
Yeah. So she asks him to give her life, touch her hand and light her soul, which makes him feel a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, she's been clearly infatuated with him. And he mentions that he wishes he could go home. And so she immediately guides him to where that is in the right direction. So she obviously...
It's been there, yes.
Yeah.
He says that they cannot fraternise because he's a teacher and she's a student. And she says, that's not what you said last night.
He has obviously been abusing his position of trust and well, again, maybe if they are women in their 20s, it's not illegal. I think it was probably quite the norm that maybe he, and in this case, obviously we know he's older, but you might have a lecturer, a professor in their maybe a 30-year-old.
Sure, but this guy's 100% abusing his position. Later on, she says she's working on an A.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that. Yeah, so no, he is abusing his position, isn't he?
Absolutely, 100%. However, he is distracted from that when he sees somebody else.
The stunning figure of a girl who he knows as Donna across the street.
This helps him figure out where and when he is, and he sees her go into a basement door, but is stopped by Jamie Lee from following.
Well, she says that this place is closed for the summer. Clearly a lie.
Oh, it's closed during the day in the summer.
Right, okay.
Donna's going there.
It's the Rathskeller, which is a bar,
basement bar
restaurant type thing, yeah.
She's working, so she's going in early before it opens.
So we arrive at Sam's house, or his lodgings.
You can immediately tell it's the 70s from the decor.
You can, yeah.
But it was very nice and very Columbo, or reminiscent of some of the homes.
Yeah.
In that show.
He makes it clear that he's uncomfortable about her being there.
Yes, he looks in the mirror and he looks like a hobo.
It does. I'm not sure why if this is a deliberate decision to make this guy not traditionally the type of person who a younger woman would be attracted to, because you could easily have got like a Harrison Ford.
Is it wish fulfillment from a script writer?
Maybe,
but then I don't think it is, because I think this is written by a woman.
Right. No, maybe I'll be just showing that, you know what, that the guy is so charming. He is so manipulative.
They're so infatuated by the literature.
Yeah, they're so taken by it that can overcome his less than obvious
aesthetic
physical
qualities, yeah. Maybe we're being superficial. He looks like he's smells.
No, I mean, we're not being superficial. I mean, I'm sorry, he's not the type of guy that physically that women would feel attracted to.
He doesn't look good. He almost certainly doesn't smell good. He'll be smelling of pipe smoke and
disgusting.
Probably sweat.
Yeah.
And old food from his beard.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. I can accept that there will be, obviously, you know, each to their own, and everyone's got their own kinks and fetishes, right? So I can understand actually there will be someone,
but not the whole class.
The whole class apparently are under his spell. I don't buy that for a second.
They're all just so into their literature.
Really? Well, not all of them. We find out not all of them.
No, that's true. Anyhow, we now get to some of the issues with this relationship with Jamie Lee.
Yeah, she talks about her daddy.
Well, first of all, she uses the word daddy, which is a big red flag.
Well, yeah.
And then reveals that she has told him everything, much to Sam's horror.
Where and when they've been pumping.
Indeed. And her father has threatened to have him horsewhipped to within an inch of his life.
Not only that, but a knuckle dragger called Oscar wants to kill him as he wants to pin her. I'm sure he does.
He's got a Scotty-esque possessive streak, this Oscar guy.
He does have, yeah.
He goes to Ohio State, so
right.
It's obviously a more prestigious university.
Okay, I think he's a jock, isn't he?
Seems to be. Maybe a football star or something. She
lights up his pipe, and at this point, Al makes an appearance. He's wearing that, did you notice he's wearing a glowing star?
Yeah, what was that all about?
I don't know. That's something we'll have to keep an eye on, see how important that is. Is it just a fashion accessory, or is it has some leaping relevance?
It just says future. Everyone wears them in the 90s. Jamie Lee shocks Sam a little when she appears to agree to his flippant proposal to commit suicide together. Yeah,
because she starts talking about Romeo and Juliet and thinks that this love pact is a great idea. But Sam firmly tells her that it's not an option, and instead suggests that she make a cup of tea, which she thinks is exactly what Jane and Edward would have done.
So she leaves, and Al explains to Sam that he shouldn't worry, this one's easy.
Yes, however, he is surprised when Sam tells him that he doesn't want to leap quickly this time, just as Jamie Lee returns.
Indeed, she says that she should tell her father and Oscar that she was lying for attention, and she asks if he's afraid to lose his tenure. But he says, no, not my tenure, my life.
He then manages to usher her out of the door, but not before she dramatically proclaims her love, and he's forced to come up with some romantic nonsense, which Al finds quite bemusing.
When the moon has crested over the towers of Camelot. I know, you better watch it, Sam. You're going to end up marrying her, too.
They got married?
June 20th, 1972. Nice little intimate shotgun wedding, 12 gauge, I think it was. That's what you're here for, is to see that those two don't ruin both their lives. Of course, there's not much more that can go wrong with Professor Bryant's.
That's not why I'm here.
Oh?
I'm here to get a second chance. Before I even get a first one.
You want to let me in on the joke?
Donna Elisi is here.
That's not funny, Sam.
But true. Don't you see, Al? I'm here to get Donna and I a second chance.
You're here to see that Guinevere there doesn't make the biggest mistake of her life.
How do you know that?
I told you because Ziggy's got a computer down to the
I don't give a damn
decimal
what a
point.
computer says. We're talking about the woman I love in my future. I'm here, she's here. We've got a second chance. And no one's gonna stop me from taking it.
Not even you.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
Well, my first thing is, how much does Sam remember about Donna? He was talking, he didn't know himself in the previous sleep, and now he knows his entire romantic history with this woman.
But that may be because of the connection, the actual love is so deep that it stirred some memories. But yeah, leaving
What else does he remember?
Leaving that aside, however, it doesn't really make much sense in the face of it how him as an old smelly professor can influence her to love him later on. It's
even if he makes her fall in love with him now, it'll be Bryant that she's in love with.
Yeah. Anyway, outside, as they walk, Al reminds him that he would be breaking his own number one rule of time travel.
Yes, the time traveller should not take advantage of his position to improve or alter his own life.
I mean, this is Back to the Future stuff, Almanac, isn't it? You don't try and mess with things, especially for your own benefit, because that's just asking for trouble.
Indeed. Sam questions whether he made that rule up, but Al says he made everybody swear to it.
However, he says, well, if I made the rule, I can rescind it. But that's not how it works.
No, he needs committee approval. And the committee are about to declare him non-compos mentis.
Who's the head of this committee? I think it's Wiseman,
something like that, yeah.
Yep. He turns out to be a bit of a, I was going to say a bit of a baddie, but perhaps not. Perhaps he's more of a stickler for...
bureaucrat.
Yeah. Apparently he controls the committee and wants Sam declared mad.
But Sam points out they can't do anything to him while he's leaping, and therefore he doesn't care.
So he walks off only to realise that he is being watched by two girls who clearly do think he is mad.
Yes, because he looks like he's talking to himself. He smiles at them and heads into the bar where he knows Donna is working.
Followed by a ghost like Al before spotting her as a waitress.
Yes, and we get a little bit of background information on Donna.
What's that?
They originally met when she was about 30. They were due to be married, but he didn't show up for the wedding.
Yeah, now they worked together on the Starbright project, so his memory is coming back here.
Indeed, Al corrects him though, saying it was her that didn't show up for the wedding, not him. But he can't tell him anymore because the committee is already threatening to remove him for providing the information he gave him last time.
Yeah, but I think he mentioned something to do with her father. Yeah, he tries to recall what's going on, and Al helps him. Like, as you say, she stood him up at the altar, but can't confirm that it was something to do with her father.
Okay.
Now, this is a question. This is like a TV or a Hollywood trope. Does anyone actually get stood up at the altar?
I'm not aware of it happening in real life, but maybe it does.
I suppose maybe back in the day when people were not so much arranged marriages, but you met someone and you didn't get to see them as much, you didn't live with them, and then that was the only...
You feel the pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, these days it would be an absolute...
it'd be a waste of money.
Yeah, who would want to get involved in that?
Just getting married stupid in the first place.
How are you getting on anyway with the Your fiancé?
Yeah, fine.
Good.
Not getting married.
Good. Engaged?
Yeah.
Okay. Engaged to be married?
Indefinitely.
Okay.
Anyhow, Sam says he's not concerned about Al being pulled because he's the only contact they have and they're not going to take that away.
At this point, Al disappears and Sam receives a smile from Donna as he sits at her table and notes that she smells the same, even though he obviously doesn't.
Indeed. She wants to keep using the same perfume for 30 years, or not using perfume.
It could be a soap.
Maybe.
A shampoo.
There's a weird moment where she finishes his burger order for him.
Well, yeah, I've got a little issue with this. Okay, anyway, so he says to himself that he wishes he could blurt out the truth to her. How he's time travelling just like they dreamt of 10 years, or they dream of 10 years later. But she knows him as Dr. Bryant. And so instead he orders a Coke and a burger, and there's apparently this brief connection as, she is able to complete how he likes his food prepared. But she hasn't met him yet. So where's this coming from?
Maybe Bryant likes it the same way and she just remembers.
Well, I've noted here, surely it can't be a coincidence that Bryant likes his food the same way as Sam.
No, well, Sam thinks it's a connection and she just knows how Sam likes it.
Yeah, but she hasn't met Sam yet. There's no reference point there. What's she?
It's a timeless connection.
And
it's not chronological.
I don't buy this at all.
It's like the bit of string it can meet at any point.
No, don't buy this at all. Not having it. In any case, Sam is delighted by this and asks if he can speak with her after work.
But she says she's quite capable of getting an A without having to do this.
Yeah, she obviously knows of his reputation and what he does. He's an appalling person, because what we're saying here is not just a case that he is using his position to attract women that he likes.
Yep.
He is offering, or there's a suggestion here that he's giving grades for sexual services.
Yes.
Which is
or withholding grades if he doesn't get them, perhaps.
Perhaps, yeah.
Anyhow, he then tries to creep her out some more by saying she should look deeply into his eyes.
Yeah, it's weird, and she should be calling or asking for her manager to remove him
and have someone else deal with it. Yeah,
but she laughs at it.
Yeah, says asks if that's his best line, and then does it for a moment before stopping and saying it's silly. And then she asks him not to speak to her again.
It's more than that. I think he says, "You'll see another soul." This is just. Why does he think that this is the way to go about this?
I think he is either confused or overwhelmed. I don't think he's acting rationally. It doesn't make any sense.
She goes to leave, assuming him to be drunk, and he grabs her wrist.
Inappropriate.
Well, of course it is. This is an assault. But rather than shout at him, or give him a slap, or pour the Coke over him, which he
deserves,
she looks at him, and there's another connection that she struggles with, and then says it's silly.
Yeah, like I say, says to leave her alone.
He stands and they stare at each other, and she definitely senses something at this point, before asking him not to talk to her again and turning on her heels.
At this point, Oscar, the jock, shows up, ready to break the face of Dr. Bryant.
I liked Oscar. I said I like Oscar and Jamie Lee. I think they're fun.
Sam asks if they can talk first, which Oscar agrees to, showing he's not entirely a Neanderthal.
Yeah, he suggests that to woo her, what she wants is compliments and poetry, but not limericks. So he starts to have a go at.
He's not buying this, but Sam explains to him he needs to connect with her on an intellectual level and let his romantic side out. Oscar's completely out on this. He says he thinks he's being fed a lot of crap, but he's willing to try anything, and if it doesn't work, he'll return to break Bryant's face. And
so when he leaves, Sam is disappointed to find that Donna has went home, and he now has a big decision to make about tomatoes.
She's obviously gone immediately home after his creepiness.
Yeah, she must have. I mean, if she has felt something, there's obviously, she's emotionally disturbed here.
There's a thing in the news today or yesterday, I think, about a waitress at a bar was treated appallingly by a group of, I think it was lawyers in this case, and the bar or the restaurant owner gave her all the money they paid for their meal. That was very good of them. £1,000. Nice. Yeah. Told them not to come back. If I was her, I'd tell them to come back and do it again. Do it again. I want another grand. Back at the Bryant house, Sam is watching some political news. I think there's an election upcoming.
Yeah, the 1972 election campaign. He's smoking his pipe. Now, here's a question. What are the rules? He is smoking a pipe. Pipes are not like cigarettes. Even then, if you ever remember your first time, if you've smoked, your first time trying to smoke as a kid, say, it's not that easy. The way you hold a cigarette and you light it up, and cigarettes are far, far easier
than a pipe.
A pipe, there's a technique to it. I've tried to light a pipe before, and it's you need to pack it down, and you need to know what you're doing. So, does Sam have this muscle memory to simply do this?
For all we know, he's a pipe smoker himself.
That's true.
He seems to have the ability anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and you would again, therefore, you're taking on the person's body. So, the ability to smoke, if you're not a smoker, you'll cough up your lungs.
Yeah.
Or if you're not a drinker, for example, how much you can handle.
It's interesting that he's choosing to smoke here, even though there's no one around to observe it.
So that's what I'm saying. Is
that because he's got this addiction? The body has an addiction, and he has to feed it.
That's the question, yeah. And is this going to be consistent throughout the show?
Oh, I doubt it. He's reading some of Bryant's own writing.
Yes, and his inner monologue explains that politics and everything else seems irrelevant compared to trying to get a chance with Donna in the future. However, he is interrupted by the arrival of Jamie Lee through an open window.
Fires burn deep, my night, as passion roars within me, riddled with guilt, yet desperate for your loins. Your Guinevere has arrived.
Oh, boy. I get the feeling that you brought this one on yourself.
Where have you been?
Waiting for the moon to crest over Camelot.
You see what I mean?
You're not dressed.
I wasn't expecting guests.
But you promised to be Lancelot next.
Next?
Sam, there's all kinds of kinky stuff in here. There's leather stuff, there's a Roman toga, there's rubber stuff.
Jamie Lee, don't you have more important things to do, like homework?
I'm trying to work on my A in English Lit.
Oh, my God. Sam, you gotta see this.
Jamie Lee, you gotta forget about me. You gotta start thinking about other men, like Oscar.
He's just a boy.
That boy wanted to break my face.
He wanted to defend my honor.
Define honor.
Oscar's willing to kill for you. Don't you think you should at least give him a chance?
But he's so stiff. So unromantic.
Not anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if Oscar started reading you romantic poetry.
Oscar?
Oscar. Look, believe me, Jamie Lee. He's the one for you, not me.
There is a touch of the Back to the Futures there as well, isn't there? Like Sam having to coach somebody else into wooing another person that's important for
like Martina's parents.
Yeah. Also, it might just be my 2022 mind which has been warped over the years with all the sort of things that we see these days. But when she referenced trying to get an A or working on her A, I assume that's more innocent than what it might be today.
I don't think it's innocent.
Yeah, but the A was specifically referencing
the grade she wants in the class.
Okay.
Not a particular activity.
Right.
Yeah, that didn't occur to anyone except for you.
I'll edit that out.
She leaves at this point before professing her undying love back through the open window. And Sam tells Al about Donna.
About how she knew how he ate his burger and doesn't care that Al points out it is nearly 12 years before they're going to meet. They are star-crossed lovers.
Al says he won't help Sam find her father, but there's a problem.
Yes, Weitzman is at this moment arguing to pull the plug on Project Quantum Leap.
Sam's not interested in this. He explains that Donna's father was a career military man, but Al still says no. I wonder if Al's performing for the committee at this point. Yeah,
see, this is the thing. We don't really know how much they can see and view and hear.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll learn more as we progress.
Indeed.
Al goes on to tell him that he has to think with his head, not his heart, but is unconvincing when Sam asks him if that is what he would do. And he doesn't like the puppy dog look or the info that her dad was in the military.
No. We then jump to an incredibly inappropriate and awkward scene in the science department.
Yeah, okay, so Sam, he's strolling down the corridors of this department. He says he loves the smell of Bunsen burners in the morning, which I liked.
Yeah.
He's obviously in his natural habitat. He feels comfortable for the first time in this leap.
But then in full predator mode, he finds Donna alone in a classroom and enters.
Yeah, she's looking amazing.
Sure, but she also looks concerned.
Yes, because this guy is known to be a pest.
Yes, and he's tracked her down and locked her in a room with him.
And of course, he is able to impress her, Goodwill Hunting style, by solving and explaining a problem before quoting from the primeval atom.
Lemaitre.
Is it?
Who knows? She asks how he knows so much, and he says he reads a lot.
And tries to deflect the questioning by asking how she got into the subject. What does she say?
She wants to figure out how things happen.
And this leads to talking about free choice and their ability to influence destiny.
Yes, and then time travel. And she says that she would go back in time to when she was happiest, when she was 6 or 7 years old, which leads to a blunder by Sam.
Yeah, before we get to that, I mean, I think it was a little bit too on the nose for me, this.
The whole scene is awkward.
Yeah. Tell me about this blunder.
He says that must have been before your father left, which is upsetting to her because she's never told anybody that her father left.
Yeah, understandably, she's creeped out by this and goes to leave, but he promises it was just a guess. Although I think did he not say that someone told him?
Well, he initially says that, and then when she says that's not true, she's never told anybody. He says, yeah, well, I read your records. And
that he's making it worse now.
Yeah.
Now he's looking into her records. This is really, really creepy.
Well, she asks him, why are you reading my records? And he says, well, you're in my class. Which seems to calm her slightly. I wouldn't be calmed by this.
No, you've no reason to read my records.
I'd be both running and phoning the police.
Yeah, at least going to the principal or whoever it is, the dean, and saying, this is really...
This creepy old man is upsetting me.
Maybe I'll be, but this was accepted behaviour.
Well, it could be that the universities or the colleges weren't interested in dealing with this sort of thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he once again, and we should say this is Sam doing this and not Bryant. Sam's the creep here.
Yes.
He doesn't take no for an answer, telling her he has a string theory that's very complex and unprovable, but he'd like her input. That's weird.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so we may as well talk about this whole sort of ethical thing just now. Not the ethics of a teacher being abusing their power, but Sam abusing this. He's abusing science and nature for his own end here.
The one thing he set down in rule number 1 that he shouldn't do.
He's manipulating the feelings of Donna, or he's trying to,
without her being aware.
Yeah,
he's taking away her opportunity to engage or have any say in this matter. He's basically dictating to her. Dictating is not the right word, but he's directing her. Yeah. He's pushing her towards a different future.
So the bigger question that we should ask is, what happens when Bryant comes back into his own body? And all these leaps, so they go to the waiting room.
Yes, and they sit and they are in Sam's body.
Question 1, can they see and hear what's going on?
I suspect not, if Al's the only one.
So they don't know what's happening. And each of these leaps that we've seen so far, he acts differently, drastically differently to how the original occupant of the body would act.
Yeah, well, maybe not the baseball one, but all the others, yeah.
Yeah. So what happens when he leaps back out?
Yeah, does Bryant stop being a sleaze because Sam wasn't?
Yeah, so
well, Sam was,
you've got Donna now who now trusts Bryant. Bryant's going to be back in there and thinking, oh yes, Donna's into me, I'm going to do a bit of this.
He's done all the groundwork for me.
He'll just abuse this. Like last week we had, was it Tom, the army?
The pilot, yeah.
So he was a far more sensitive person who liked to dance and listen to his wife. He's got to come back in there and just want to get out with Bird Dog, drinking and laughing, and she won't know what's going on. It's really dramatically changed
personality changes, yeah.
It's changed the universe that he's left, and not necessarily, even though it might look to be for the better because he's a nicer guy or a better guy. In this case, it's arguable that he's
just sleazy to somebody different.
Yeah, exactly, for a different reason.
Yeah.
So what happens? That's my question in this show. How do they react when the original person goes back into their body?
We never know.
I think we need to know at some point. I'm hoping that these are the type of things that, obviously pre-internet, people will be writing into the newspapers, right, saying, "Oh, what happens to this?" And Balsario or the writers will take on board that actually this is a fairly big question that we need to address.
What will happen is it will be addressed when there's a story that requires it to be addressed.
Okay,
that would be my guess.
I hope we do get an answer.
It'll be good, because it's a bit unsatisfactory.
Very unsatisfactory. He's leaving these people in all sorts of awkward situations.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, so we get a bit more creepiness talking about this expanding but finite universe. And she says the universe is infinite. And he says that maybe not, and if not, then time is finite too. And she says she's going to the library, which he points out is a safe public place.
We then have a montage of them studying together and Sam explaining string theory as Al did to him.
Silently though.
Yes.
We don't hear it.
We don't know.
Outside we see Sam demonstrating Al's string concept using a tie.
Yeah.
And then in a bar...
It's a rat scaler.
Is it back in the rat scaler?
I think so, yeah.
He explains that he thinks it's limited to the person's lifetime.
Yeah. We've now established they are friends, or certainly...
They've made a connection.
They have.
But Donna says she's now getting a headache and has to start working, and he asks, can they continue this later? And she says only if it's in a public place.
Yeah, she's a very sensible person.
Quite rightly sceptical about this man's intentions.
She leaves and Al appears. He is concerned that he may be revealing information that could allow the development of a nuclear bomb.
Well, yeah, he wants to know if he's giving away trade secrets, and he says he's been there long enough to know that Sam still has that amount of knowledge. But using hints, he's able to get Sam to understand that he is not now alone. He's being observed.
Well, I'm not sure if he's observed or listened to.
Yeah, Al is, not Sam.
Yes. So Sam reveals that he thinks he has discovered a pattern in Donna's behaviour. She has daddy issues.
Well, that's good for him to figure this out and decide to fix it for her.
He's not... Well, he's a psychologist, but did we find that out? He's got a degree in psychology.
Does he not say it's not one of his degrees?
I'm not sure. I think we laughed at it last week, saying that if he had so many, why would he need one? But maybe one is in human psychology. Anyway, he has obviously worked out...
Al's about to tell him that none of them are in...
Yes, you're right. So he has just worked out in the back of a cigarette packet that she's got daddy issues, and because of this, that's why she keeps leaving people, specifically him.
Well, she's left two people at the altar.
Yeah.
One before him and then him.
Quite arrogant of him, isn't it?
Yeah. We learn, however, that he does have doctorates in medicine, quantum physics and ancient languages. And
points down, to a towel hanging from his belt that is covered in hieroglyphics.
That's not the most subtle thing.
No, but they get through a quick game of charades, and Sam is able to work out that Donna's father is working where?
Washington.
The Pentagon.
And as Al is dragged out by somebody in the whatever room he's in, the imaging chamber, he shouts, "How can I write Colonel Wojciechowicz in hieroglyphics?" So that gives Sam that bit of information as well.
She then re-enters, and at this, Sam asks her to go with him to Washington for a day.
She's very dubious.
Yeah, to save lost love, apparently that's what he says.
He does say, though, that there'll be a chaperone with them.
Mm-hmm.
So we assume that she agrees to that.
And we next see Donna's father at his office. Prior to going to meet him, Sam decides to call to tell him what the situation is.
Colonel Wojciechowicz.
Thank God.
What?
Colonel, you don't know me. My name is Bryant. Dr. Gerald Bryant, and I'm on the faculty at Lawrence College in Marion, Ohio.
Yes.
I was wondering if I could see you.
Dr. Bryant, I ship out for Vietnam at 0800 tomorrow.
Vietnam?
I'm sure you've heard of it.
Of course. I just...
Doctor, I'm very busy. Would you get to the point?
It's your daughter. Colonel, are you there?
Yes.
Do you remember Donna?
Of course I remember Donna.
She needs you, sir.
Is she hurt?
No, not physically. Colonel, since you're shipping out tomorrow, I don't have time to be subtle about this. I don't know why you left your family. I'm sure you had your reasons. But your leaving and never contacting her again has affected Donna's ability to love anyone else.
Dr. Bryant. The breakup with her mother and I had nothing to do with her.
She doesn't think you love her. That if you did, you wouldn't have abandoned her.
I love my daughter. I loved her very much. I'm not going to reopen this wound. Not when I'm shipping out. Maybe when I come back.
Well, forgive me, sir, but, what if you don't come back?
Goodbye, Dr. Bryan.
Just a damn minute.
Who's at the door?
That's Oscar, who immediately punches Sam in the face, but is punched back.
And then he amusingly tells him that his advice didn't work. He read her poetry and then told her perfume and lips made him horny.
Sam explains why that didn't work and asks if he has a car, which he does.
Yeah, he proudly confirms it's a 68 GTO, and Sam asks if the four of them can go on a road trip.
Yes, and Oscar's up for that.
Yeah, so we're next with them in the GTO on the road. They listen to Don McLean.
They do, and they see a deer.
Yes, which elicits different responses between Oscar and Jamie Lee.
Yeah, Oscar wants to shoot it, and Jamie Lee is very upset about this.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to cause some problems until Sly Sam and Donna point out what?
Some of her literary heroes hunted deer.
Yeah.
That calms her down a wee bit, and they stop for fuel.
At a gas station, where Sam smiles when he's told that he doesn't need a key for the bathroom. Obviously more trusting days, times.
Yeah, Al shows up, and Sam is pleased to see that he's not been taken off the project.
Yeah, Weitzman had a change of heart, or at least his wife did.
This is I don't understand what's being said here. So Al says that Weissman had a change of heart because he got set up with Tina and then blackmailed.
Yeah, I think he was Weitzman having an affair with Bartlett's wife.
Right, and Al found out and said he would tell Weissman's wife.
Yeah, I'd imagine so, yeah.
It seems to make sense to Sam anyway.
Now, does this cover the entire show then? Or is Weitzman a thing? I can't remember Weitzman ever been mentioned, so I'm not sure if they just forget about this whole...
I'm not sure. We'll find out.
Yeah. Anyway, Al tells him that Ziggy has computed the odds and it is 4-1 that if she works things out with her father, she will commit to a man in the future.
But it might be the first guy and not Sam. That's the risk that he's taking.
Yeah, but Sam's delighted in that. I don't think Sam understands odds. I mean, unless they're saying this wrong, but 4-1 is not good odds.
Well, it depends what the other options are.
Yeah, but 4-1 is like 80% that
against
it, yeah, happening.
I think they just chuck in these odds as figurative ones.
Okay. Back in the car, on the road, Donna confesses that she thought he wrote his book just to pick up students, but now accepts that he is a romantic, but thinks it is for what he's doing here is for Oscar and Jamie Lee's benefit.
Yeah, and she asks then why she had to come. And he explains that she reminds him of a woman that he loved who was a quantum physicist, which explains why he knew so much about the subject. But she didn't show up for their wedding. This makes her sad.
He then explains that he is taking her to see her father. You can't do this.
No, he's just spring it on her. And the fact that she responds positively is really weird.
Yeah,
she sees this as a romantic act.
It's manipulation, and she should demand that he turn around.
Yeah, she just said, no, I'm not doing it. Anyway, they get to Washington, they park up, but Sam and Donna have problems getting past the security desk.
Effectively, they get denied access. So outside, she laments that it wasn't meant to be, and Sam says that she sounds like Ziggy before guiding her off with an idea. Inside,
one of the guys on the desk says that the two of them had bothered him a little bit, so he goes off to investigate the car, which has Ohio plates.
Which some reason alerts him. I don't know why that would.
They've travelled a long way to get here. They're on high alert for a reason.
Okay. So he calls this through in his walkie-talkie, which Jamie Lee hears. She's lying unseen in the back and a bit worried. But the heroic Oscar says he'll protect her.
Indeed.
That's what a woman wants, protection from a man, a strong man.
A strong man, look after her, bring meat. Meanwhile, Sam and Donna have managed to sneak into the building, and as the desk guy checks at the underground car park, Donna is able to meet with her father.
Yeah, before that I think we see him, does he look at a picture of his young daughter as the doorbell goes?
Yeah, he's looking at a picture of her as they arrive.
So he opens the door to find a teary daughter who thinks she has made a mistake, but he corrects her.
Yes, he says it was his mistake and he's sorry and he loves her, and she says that's all she wanted to hear. And then there's a weird exchange.
Is there?
About him being younger and her being... Oh, no, this is between Sam and Donna.
Yes.
Now. There's a weird exchange between Sam and Donna where he talks about himself being younger and her being older and then kisses her on the nose and leaves.
Yeah.
Super creepy.
It's very creepy, yeah. I mean, if you didn't know what Sam meant, it would be really, really creepy.
And she doesn't.
No. Back down in the parking lot, Jamie Lee wonders where Bryant is, but Oscar tells her that she doesn't need him, as he is with her. And she accepts this.
The desk guy finds a door with the lock taped over to keep it open and calls the police, and it turns out that this is the Watergate building.
Yeah,
Bit on the
okay,
nose.
very much so, yeah.
Not only is it the Watergate building, it's the date of Watergate
Yeah.
break-in.
So, okay.
The times don't work out for me, though.
Do they not?
Well, it must be early in the morning because the father ships out at 8 a.m. But the Watergate break-in was later, so it must not have happened yet. But he's already found this door.
Yeah. Well, they're messing about with history.
Yeah, they maybe broken it, and so Watergate doesn't happen now. Anyhow, Oscar is about to tell Jamie Lee once more that she makes him horny, but is able to correct himself to breathless with passion on Sam's earlier guidance.
In the stairwell, we rejoin Al and a very pleased with himself Sam.
You seem pretty pleased with yourself.
Yeah.
Well, so am I. Of course, Ziggy's blowing out microchips like they were popcorn. He didn't see it coming.
What?
What? Sam, this is the 17th of June, 1972. So, we're in the Watergate. Break-in, Nixon, impeachment.
I don't remember.
Oh, boy, the Republicans would love you. You didn't love me. You know, I don't understand you, pal. Well, you're wearing that goofball grin, and Donna is probably going to end up marrying that sucker that she hooked before you.
Maybe not. Maybe she'll jilt him and marry me.
Want to bet?
Yeah. I got connections.
Then how come you haven't leaped yet?
Meanwhile, in the car, Jamie Lee and Oscar kiss, which leads to Sam's leap taking place.
Yeah, so that's also the real reason why he was there.
Yep, and he arrives in a boxing ring where he's punched in the face and goes down.
Indeed.
And that's the end.
Yeah, how did you find that?
I enjoyed it.
It was good.
I mean, Sam's a sleazy man.
Yeah, I think there are issues there that I'm not sure if this is going to be a recurring.
See, this is the thing. So when we did Star Trek, we picked up Scotty being a sleazeball, and a lot of folks told us, no, he's a romantic. We're reading it all wrong. I wonder if people think Sam's behaviour is appropriate in this episode.
I think there'll be many people who will think it inappropriate.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But anyone who doesn't think it's inappropriate.
Maybe back in the day, I think, again, looking at it from 2022, it's more obvious that you really shouldn't be doing this type of thing. I think back then, professors, sleeping with, it was a cliche, it was a trope, especially the sort of English literature type ones.
So where does it sit in 1989 when it was released? Is it sleazy or acceptable?
I'd say borderline. I'd say probably still on the acceptable. I don't think you'd be getting sacked for.
So it's not being written, is the point I'm making, to make Sam seem sleazy.
No, I don't. I think
he's
he's
written to make Sam seem like a romantic who loves Donna and is acting reasonably.
I would think you're meant to get behind Sam on this rather than saying, Sam, you're out of order.
Yeah.
And because this is, I believe, at the start of an arc.
Okay. Hopefully.
Or certainly, it's not. This can't be a one-off for the obvious reasons that, it's something that he's...
it wasn't just Donna that he was manipulating, it was Jamie Lee and it was Oscar as well.
Yeah. Well, that's what we discussed, and that's a big question we had. He has to manipulate situations. He's got to change history. But
there's no suggestion at any point in this episode that he's considering anything other than what he wants.
No, it's entirely selfish. Yeah, which is an issue. But it's good that he's not necessarily then, from a TV point of view, it's good to see that he's
golden
not...
child.
Yeah, exactly. That he has got his foibles.
I did really like the 70s aesthetic of the whole episode.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll see more of it.
The car and the locations and everything.
Yeah, even though that it felt a little bit. Well, he did say, wasn't it? The car wasn't it was an older car, wasn't it? It wasn't a 70s car.
A classic.
Yeah. Okay. And the boxing one looks good for next week.
Indeed. Some trivia?
Sure, but before we do, why don't we quickly recap what we've learned? The big take-homes from this week's episode. I'll start here.
Okay.
So we find out he had been stood up by, or is going to be stood up by Donna Elise, who he worked with.
Yes, at the altar.
Yeah.
We also learn that he's got a doctorate in ancient languages and doesn't have one in psychiatry or psychology.
Yeah.
Whichever they mentioned. And we've got this number one rule, so I don't know if this is going to be a recurring sort of prime directive type rule or it's just a thing that Al says in this episode, but that seemed to be...
Indeed. We know that Weitzman controls a committee related to the Quantum Leap project, and he seems to be a bit of an antagonist at the moment, so
yes.
It'll be interesting to see if that continues.
We also know that Al has dirt on him.
Yes. And finally, what do I have here? Yeah, Ziggy can physically remove Al from the leap destination. He can be pulled.
Well, somebody pulled him anyway.
Somebody, yeah.
There you
go.
Okay, so, trivia.
Sure.
Original air date, 31st of March, 1989. Directed by Mark Sobel. This was his only Quantum Leap episode, but he also directed episodes of shows like The Equalizer, The Outer Limits, and The New Adventures of Superman. Deborah Pratt wrote the episode. She's an integral part of the Quantum Leap team. She was a co-executive producer on all of the episodes and wrote 20 of them. She's also written for Airwolf and Magnum P.I. and directed an episode of Grey's Anatomy. She's appeared in shows like Happy Days, Days of Our Lives, and Airwolf, for which she's the last surviving cast member, or original cast member. Magnum P.I., she's been in that as well, and she's the narrator and the voice of Ziggy in 65 episodes of Quantum Leap. She's a 5-time Emmy nominee, a Golden Globe nominee, and was married to Donald Belisario until 1991.
Impressive.
She's now 70, and she remains active as a writer and as a performer. Terry Hatcher, you might have heard of her.
Yeah, once or twice.
She played Donna Elise. I first came across her in Superman. This was her only Quantum Leap appearance, but she's a well-known face, having starred in shows like The New Adventures of Superman, Desperate Housewives, MacGyver. She was a Bond girl in Tomorrow Never Dies. She appeared in an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, and other shows like Seinfeld, Frasier, and Superman adjacent series Smallville and Supergirl.
I first saw her in Tango and Cash.
There you go. She was also the voice of Dottie in Disney's 2 Planes movies, which I liked, even if nobody else did.
Okay.
She's now 57 and remains active.
Yeah. Do you know Tango and Cash was the last movie of the 80s?
The very last?
Yeah. Last big studio one, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Why?
Because it was 1989.
Oh, there wasn't a reason? It just happened to be right at the end of 1989? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it didn't kill
so
the
after
80s.
This, we're stopping for 5 years. Leslie Sachs played Jamie Lee.
I've got a little bit of trivia about her, if you don't cover it.
Okay, this was her only Quantum Leap episode. She was in things like New Adventures of Superman, Frasier, The X-Files, and Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but her last screen credit was in 2002. There you go.
Yeah, alongside Scott Bakula.
There you go.
A Role of a Lifetime, I think the movie was called. Sounds like a TV movie.
Made for TV.
Yeah.
Or straight to VCR back in those days.
Yeah, so that's sort of my trivia that I had. So she starred with Terry Hatcher in Superman.
Yeah.
With Scott Bakula. And there's a sort of Dean Stockwell connection. So she starred in the TV spin-off of Married to the Mob.
Okay.
Married to the Mob was
in the movie.
Yeah, he was in the movie. So I wasn't
She's
quite
got ties.
Ties, yeah.
Michael McGrady, you might have recognised him.
I did. I've seen him in a few episodes of Murder, She Wrote. He's been in a lot of stuff.
Yeah. But
he played a boxer in one that I recall quite clearly.
Yeah, so he played Oscar in this. This was quite an early appearance in his career. He's gone on to be a prolific performer. This is his only Quantum Leap, and as you say, he was in 3 Murder, She Wrote. He was in The X-Files, 24, Star Trek Enterprise, opposite Scott Bakula, obviously, CSI, Criminal Minds, Ray Donovan, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., amongst many, many others. He's also the lead singer and guitarist for his band, the Sonic Groove Band, and he remains active. He's now 62 years old.
I think he's what you call a sort of typical character actor.
There's far fewer dead people in this than there are in Star Trek and Columbo.
Always a positive.
One of the things for a more recent show, isn't it?
Maybe we can try and reach out to them in the socials then.
Well, that might be irritating for them.
What? telling them how much we like their work. No, they'll appreciate that.
No. Why don't we repeat their catchphrases back to them?
I don't believe it.
Michael Gregory played Colonel Wojciechowicz. This was his only Quantum Leap role, but of course, you will remember him better from his Columbo appearance.
Okay, remind me.
He was Mr. Hacker in A Bird in the Hand.
I didn't remember that, to be fair.
He also appeared in shows like The A-Team, ER, and Tales from the Crypt. He was also in RoboCop.
Okay.
And he was also a voice in the RPG game Dragon Age Origins, which is my all-time favourite console computer game.
Right, my second favourite.
Okay, he remains active and he's now 77 years old. He does quite a lot of computer game voiceover. It must be like once you get into that industry you get used.
Mm-hmm.
Charles Walker played Frank Willis, the security guard who followed Sam and Donna at the Watergate Hotel. This was his only Quantum Leap, but he was in films like Splash and Almost Famous, as well as series like Babylon 5, Charmed, and one episode of Columbo.
Who was he?
He was a truck driver in Murder in Malibu.
Oh, alright.
He's now 77 years old, seems to still be working.
Yeah, good. Watergate's not a hotel, is it? It's an office complex.
No. Looks like a hotel to me.
It maybe had a hotel part to it, but it wasn't a hotel.
Yes, it was a...
Why would they break into a hotel? Someone, you would...
I thought there was a suite or something where people were...
That was offices they broke into.
It's more boring. Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
Carry on.
John Taylor played Bryant's reflection, the real Jerry Bryant. This was his only appearance in Quantum Leap and just about his career highlight. He was in One Murder, She Wrote, as well as Hill Street Blues and Falcon Crest, but his screen career was not prolific and his final credit was in 1999.
Maybe he's a highly successful stage actor.
Potentially, yeah. So my understanding, other trivia, we covered most of it, but my understanding of the timeline is that Don is meeting her father before he ships out at 8 a.m. to Vietnam on the morning of 17th June. Watergate break-in would have been later on the 17th of June, but that doesn't really make sense if the guys already found the door that's been taped. You saw the lock had been taped over, so that's part of the Watergate break-in. So I don't know how it fits. Maybe it doesn't quite fit, or maybe this is set later and they forgot the 8 a.m. thing.
Yeah.
It did seem like nighttime, didn't it?
It did.
And maybe it's the following day he's shipping out and they just travelled really quickly.
Possibly.
Who knows? Anyway, Nixon went on to win the 72 election, resigned in 74, obviously, replaced by Ford, who lost the 76 election to Jimmy Carter, so that fills in the political story. And that's it. That's us this week. So
we done?
Next time we've got The Right Hand of God.
What year do we leap into?
Well, it's 1974. Sam's got a fight to win for some very enthusiastic nuns. So we'll see folk in 7 days' time.
Until then,
cheerio.
Bye bye.